Thank you so much for listening to us. Well, I hope you listen to us for the next 15 minutes. My name's Sophie and I work at Monese, as you can tell from my beautiful t-shirt. And we're really proud to be one of the sponsors of today's event. And you'll find actually in your goodie bags these non-personalized debit cards. We are a digital bank account that you open on your mobile phone, and you can open an account in a couple minutes just by using a piece of ID, like a passport or driver's license, and we don't ask for proof of address, which makes this great for people who've just arrived in the country, or indeed refugees, which is why we're here today. So I'm here with the great team from the Derby Refugee Advice Centre, or DRAC, and we are actually business partners now, which is really great. And they've helped Monese launch a program this year to distribute our accounts for free to refugees in the UK, and we're eventually hoping to extend that to Europe. Ruth, I'll pass on to you to introduce DRAC.
Lovely, thank you. My name's Ruth and I'm the volunteer coordinator, amongst other things, at Derby Refugee Advice Centre. And we work locally within the city, helping refugees and asylum seekers throughout their journey as they claim asylum in the UK. And we do that in lots of different ways. So we work with people as they're claiming asylum, and we help support them, signpost them, and try and give them the best advice that we can while they're in NAS accommodation and claiming their money from the government. So we try and help as much as we can with any issues that they're having while people are asylum seekers. And then once they become refugees, we also work very closely with them then, especially in the first 28 days when people get asylum. It's often a very, I'm sure as Ahmed will say later, that when you get your refugee status, it's, yay, I'm a refugee, that's fantastic. But that really is when all the hard work starts to integrate here into the UK. And you've got 28 days to try and get as much done as possible to get into working and living here in the UK. So we do try and help people with housing, we help try and find jobs, we help with universal credit applications, and we also help with banking, which is one of the real issues that people have once they become a refugee. We also do lots of other things. We do lots of workshops, English classes, trips, activities, really to try and get people integrated into the local society. And I won't go into that any further now, but if you want to find out more, we've got some copies of our annual report which tells everybody what we do. And if I haven't got enough, I'm quite happy to email those out to people later.
Yeah, I was lucky to visit DRAC on Tuesday this week, and it was amazing to see the work they do. It's really astonishing. Ruth is the only employee of the organisation, and they just run on an army of 50 volunteers, which is just astonishing. So Ahmed, you're one of the volunteers at DRAC, and you were granted refugee status in September last year. So can you tell us a bit about what it was like trying to open a bank account?
Actually, it wasn't easy at all. When I got my status as a refugee, I thought that everything's going to be very easy and smoothly. But no, it wasn't. I had to go to many banks requesting to open bank accounts, but all of them, they just refuse. And each one of them, they request for different requirements. And even the same bank keep requesting you for different requirements every day. Each day that I go to again and again, even if I provide something that you request, he will request another thing. As you see that the banks is the essential of everything in the UK. If you want to get a house, you have to have a bank account. If you want to pay a bill, you have to have a bank account. If you want to open universal credit, you have to have a bank account. And the funny thing is, universal credit will not pay you until you have a bank account. So it wasn't easy at all. It takes me a long time until I get the full help from Janet to open me a bank account, really.
And how long did that take you from being granted status to being able to open an account?
From September to November.
So 2 months.
Almost 2 months, yes.
And Janet, you know, obviously you helped Ahmed in this scenario, so you must see these cases quite often. What are some of the barriers you think that stop refugees being able to open bank accounts?
The barriers are really significant. For any asylum seeker who has just become a refugee, they will have an ID card as a refugee, and they will also have letters from the Home Office with their address on, and potentially letters from their housing organisation, which is usually G4S or is now Serco. But they will be moving out of that address in 28 days anyway. Their ID and the Home Office letter giving them leave to remain is part of what they need to open a bank account, but you need other things as well, like a utility bill or a tenancy agreement, and people simply haven't had the opportunity to have that, or have those letters. People used to get their national insurance number on a letter with their address at the top. They don't get that now, so it's very, very difficult for people to have the ID and the documentation necessary to get a bank account. Sorry, I'm just thinking of the next thing. I've dried up.
So Janet, are there any sort of social or emotional barriers to that kind of process?
Yes, it's very, very difficult for somebody to actually walk into a bank. These buildings can be quite overpowering to walk in, to talk to somebody, to ask to set up an interview. Often there will be language barriers. Often if people haven't been in the country very long, they haven't had the opportunity to go to English classes. So English might be quite limited. When you go into a bank, the forms and the discussion is going to be very complex. You've got to be able to read through the forms, you've got to be able to sign a contract, you've got to make decisions about what sort of bank account you want, and there are several bank accounts available. So it's very, very difficult for people to actually carry out that process, let alone not having the relevant documentation. Banks ask for different documentation, different high street banks will ask for different letters, etc. And even the same banks with different managers will also ask for different documentation. So it's very, very difficult for a new refugee to overcome all their barriers, which is why we found Monese to be such an amazing new bank that enables people to access a bank account very, very quickly.
How long does it usually take?
To access a bank account?
For Monese, a Monese bank account?
5 to 10 to 15 minutes normally. And
wow.
As Ahmed said, he took nearly 2 months of a very stressful time because a bank account is so essential to move on.
So Ahmed, what was it like for you when you were finally able to open your bank account? What doors did it open for you?
A lot, actually. Almost everything. In the beginning, I wasn't able to actually to pay any kind of services because when I got my status in October, I had to move to a supported accommodation, and they request for a service charge, which I wasn't able to pay it because I didn't have a bank account. But after I got the bank account, I became able to pay my service charge. I become able to receive my payments from the universal credit. I become able to get a job, and almost everything becomes easy right now. I feel like I'm more part of here right now.
And Ruth, is what Ahmed's saying common?
Yeah, it's incredibly common. Here in the UK, if you've lived in the UK all your life, sometimes it can be difficult for us to get bank accounts. But actually, they're so integral to what we do every day. How many of us use cash these days? How many of us get a card out of our pockets and actually do, even these days it's contactless, isn't it? You don't always have to get your card out your pocket. But we're dealing with cash less and less and less these days. And actually to feel part of a community and to feel that you belong and that you're part of the UK society, what we consider to be quite insignificant and you know, it's a small part of our lives, actually to be able to open up an everyday life, a bank account is absolutely essential. And it means that people can take charge of their own lives again. It means they can do budgeting. Once you've done it a while, yes, it's very boring, and we'd sooner not be doing budgeting. But actually, to be able to have some control over your life, that's an important part. It's important that you've got control over your own money, that your money isn't going into a friend's bank account, and that actually they've gone away for the weekend and suddenly you haven't got any money because you're dependent on them giving you the money because it's had to go into their bank accounts. So it's that freedom and it's that feeling of belonging and being part of society that actually makes something that we consider quite small to be actually a real significant part of everyday life.
So this one tiny thing that should happen the moment you're granted status usually doesn't and can stop you integrating properly and stop you living your life in the UK.
Yeah.
So what to sort of wrap up, what is one thing each of you think that financial institutions can do better to help refugees get bank accounts the moment they need them?
Clear information about the process. This is one of the things which I noticed while I'm dealing with the banks. Really, each bank have a different process, and the same bank could have a different requirement or process every single day. So I remember that one of the banks that he requested me for something, and when I provided the next day, he gave me a different requirement. And when I did provide the second thing, he requested me for another requirement. And this is what I believe, that clear information about the process is better.
Having standardised practices throughout the whole of the banks would be incredibly useful. So we all have a real clear idea of what information and identification you need in order to be able to open a bank account. Rather than Ahmed said, one day it's one thing and another day it's something else. So, not only being clear about what they actually want, having it standardised across all banks would be really useful as well.
And staff training within banks and across banks, so the staff are aware of the most appropriate accounts for refugees, and that staff are also aware of what it feels like to be a new refugee coming into a bank, trying to set up an account with a lot of difficult language, difficult concepts, and something that people may not have experienced before, so that staff, anybody who sees somebody, is able to help them effectively.
Cool. So, I think we've given a decent summary of what some of the issues are and what it really means to be integrated into the financial system in the way that any UK resident should be. And if you want to know more about Monese or DRAC, please just come talk to us after. We'd really love to meet you. And especially at Monese, we're looking to reach as many clients as possible who need us. So if you're connected to any organisations that deal with clients in the way that DRAC does, please come talk to me. And thank you so much.